It's our first episode of 2022, so Happy New Year from the playground. On this episode, we've got 5 New Year's resolutions for camp in 2022. We're going to share 5 things for camp to think about focusing on in the year ahead. Welcome to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, where we dive deeply into theology, research, and practical wisdom for camps, retreat centers, and other key ministry spaces. I'm your host, Jared Rendell, camp enthusiast and part of the Sacred Playgrounds team. This podcast features Dr. Jake Sorensen, a scholar and practitioner who's helping us all think more deeply about outdoor ministries. Wander with us what God might have in store at your Sacred Playground. Welcome to the playground, everyone. The first episode of 2022. Happy New Year, Jake.
Happy New Year, Jared. It's kind of crazy to think of this 2022. Wow, the years go flying by. Or maybe I'm just getting old.
They do.
Is that what happens when you get old?
Apparently, because I am with you. So maybe we're getting there. Do you guys have here's our sign of age, right? Did you go out for New Year's? Like, did you guys go, do you celebrate by going out on the town?
Not during COVID, we don't. And so with the COVID surge, we didn't get together with a bunch of other people. We tried to see if we could get together with a few. So we were with Anna's parents on New Year's Eve, and then we kind of came home and it was just the 4 of us, and we we like got a bunch of appetizers and we had some fun drinks, and it was just the 4 of us, and we hung out together and rung in the new year. How about you guys?
Same. We did that pre-COVID too. Like, we got real lame on New Year's real quick. The kids came and we're like, yeah, we're staying home. So exact same. We the appetizers. I've been feasting on buffalo chicken dip for days on end now. Just a steady diet of hot sauce and cream cheese going on in me. And then like you said, a little sparkling grape juice or whatever, and for the kids, and look on Netflix for kid ball drop things where they've got like countdowns. So we do that at like 8:15 and they're off. And we barely make it. Sometimes we make it. We barely make it to midnight.
One of the great things was they included Puerto Rico this year in the New Year's Eve celebrations. So that was 2 hours earlier. So it was 10 o'clock our time in Central Time that they did the first New Year's celebration. So I was like, okay, we can go to bed if we want. We ended up staying up and watching New York and then New Orleans and Chicago. But anyway,
fun. Well, in the spirit of New Year's, we're gonna talk resolutions, not for us but for camp in this episode, right? So we've got 5, everybody. We've got 5 New Year's resolutions Jake and I have come up with for camp. So we'll see what is intriguing for you, and then be ready, because we're going to ask for yours too. We're going to ask for yours wherever you end up seeing this, whether you send us an email or jump on Facebook or something. We want to hear your New Year's resolutions for camp. So let's dive in, huh?
Absolutely.
So resolution number 1, Jake, you're up. What's our first resolution for camp in 2022?
We are going to make a special focus on respectful participatory dialogue. And this is like, we always try to do this at camp, but I think we should really emphasize it this year. There has been a decline in respectful dialogue in our society, and we see that in things like bullying, and the increased instances in bullying. We see that through social media and some of the really mean comments that people are able to make without any consequences, without even seeing the look on the person's face that they insulted. And then we see it on the national stage as well, with specifically with politics. We've gotten really hyper partisan, to the point where we had a storming of the Capitol a year ago. Here we are a year out from that right now.
A year ago today.
And so, we've talked in a couple of the previous episodes. And so this is a little bit of a callback to our episode on bullying and our episode on democratic decision making at camp. And we can emphasize both of these things in this resolution and say, this is something that we are going to make a focus. This is a strength of camp. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to go through several steps in order to do this. One, we're going to have some really intentional discussion among our year-round staff about what this means and about how we can bring people together in conversation and bring different ideas together without um, without the bullying aspect, without people, canceling each other or saying you have the wrong opinion, but really promote that respectful dialogue among our year-round staff. And then in summer staff training, really hitting this hard and bring in an expert. Don't just try to do this yourself. Bring in an expert who can really talk about what young people are going through, about how to go through conflict resolution in particular, because people are going to disagree. That's not the problem. That's actually one of the strengths of camp, is that we can build these relationships and we can disagree with one another, but we can do it in respectful ways. So rather than bullying. And so as we talked about in the bullying episode, some people think of bullying as more than what it is. They think any time that somebody disagrees with your opinion or something, or says that's a dumb opinion, then I'm being bullied. That's being disrespectful. And we want to make sure that people aren't saying that's a dumb opinion. How can we bring people around and help them understand the way that we are thinking through things, and also try to more deeply understand how they're thinking about things? And so, for instance, the people who stormed the Capitol, why would they do something like that? What was going through their heads? How were they incited to do something like that? And we need to, get in front of that so that the inciting of violence doesn't happen like that. Both at camp, but also with the larger society in mind. And so that's really what I want our camps to do. Focus on it with year-round staff, focus on it in summer staff training, and then hit it every week at summer camp. Talk about respectful dialogue. This is how we talk with one another, have a system for talking about that, and then have a system of conflict resolution. So that's not just, when a conflict happened, don't talk to each other that way, or don't do that, or you're going to get punished, or have a real system in place for when this happens, this is how we respond, so that everybody understands that, because it will happen, and the instances have been growing at camp as they have in our society, and we as camping professionals can really contribute something here.
Yeah, I bet there are. I love your idea about bringing someone in for that, right? With some school counselor, right? It might be a local, somebody who works for a local agency or for the, local county or city or something like that, to bring someone in. I remember staff trainings when the few times that we had brought people in for a certain thing. One, I mean, it's a new voice to listen to. And I love then that, like we talked about in those other episodes, we're offering something, providing something that matters for life, not just, not just our Jesus-centered life even, or this week, or how things work at church, but at home and at school. That's really valuable.
We're trying to build better people, and through the better people, we're trying to build better societies. And so that's the idea of building better Christians so we can build a better church, right? It's the same sort of idea. So anyway, that's my first one, focusing on respectful participatory dialogue. What do you got? Give me one from you.
This year, we focus on our brains and our spirits. We focus on mental health this year in 2022 at camp. We talked about this, a bit in, I guess a couple of the different episodes. This came up in the COVID focused episode and a couple others, but we are tired. We are exhausted. Both you camp and church professionals, and your families are, and your parents are. And we definitely talked about that with summer staff. Summer staff were exhausted. We lost, a bunch of them in terms of they couldn't make it through the summer. And so many of those reasons were mental health related. So this year, we focus on mental health. And there are two groups of people we're going to focus on in that. Number one is yourself. Camp, church professional, focusing on yourself. And of course, we say that every year, every New Year's resolution. But here's how we're going to do that. Number one is find a person, right? This isn't something that you can just muster up enough energy and capacity to take good care of yourself and just eat better, or just sleep better, or just whatever it is. We run hard at camp, and the best thing we might be able to do is to not run alone. So finding a person who is going through something similar. So maybe it's connecting with your network, your camp network of, of others that are going through the same thing. You put a post out in the Facebook group or whatever it is and say, hey, this is where I am. Here's a few things about where I am. Who else is going through this? And start some conversation and find a person to connect with and walk with. Simply don't do this alone. It's so easy to get isolated at camp. It's so easy to get isolated in this kind of ministry. So that's one. Two, as you're thinking about your programs, this is another way you take care of yourself. As you're thinking about your programs and you're thinking about the exciting energy of doing something new, you will almost surely have to lose something else. You've already filled your capacity to the full. So as you're thinking about a new idea, a new program, do that new exciting thing. We're going to talk about a couple ideas for that in future resolutions here in a few minutes. But heads up, you might need to lose a program in order to do that and still stay sane. So Jake, that's one is taking care of yourself and a few tangible ways to do that. But the other thing that came up is taking care of our summer staff, right? We know that it was so hard, that summer was so hard. So that's another group to take care of. You already brought up staff training. All right, we want to take care of the summer staff well too in terms of their mental health.
Absolutely. This I'm so glad you brought up this mental health challenge, because it is so pervasive in our society right now, and it really is among our young people. And there are statistics that are coming out now, and it's only just beginning to come out in sort of the mid COVID and late COVID kind of times. But even before the pandemic, we had a lot of challenges with depression and anxiety and things like that. But we did a survey of summer staff this past summer, and we're just getting those results now. But looking at the number that said they had something like thoughts of self-harm in 2021 before camp started, a third of the summer staff members that we surveyed had thoughts of self-harm in the months prior to the summer.
Whoa.
2/3, 69% of the incoming staff said they had feelings of overwhelming anxiety at least monthly. And over a third said weekly or more. And over half said they felt very down or hopeless at least monthly. I mean, so we're talking about very serious mental health challenges as these young people are coming into the summer camp experience. And these are the young people that we're expecting to work 23 hours a day. You get 1 hour off. Great. Go use the bathroom and maybe take a shower. It's a stressful job. And so we need more than ever to provide mental health resources for these summer staff members. And we were short-staffed this past summer. We talked about this in a previous episode. And so we really need to resource our staff. And I think one of the ways to do that is to have somebody there, especially for the summer staff. And oftentimes that's like a chaplain, a seminary person or somebody that can really isn't the supervisor, isn't going to be the one to be like, I'm glad that you're telling me this, but I have to fire you because you just told me this. We need somebody who can be a chaplain to them, who can really listen to them. And we need to have professional mental health resources available. That doesn't necessarily mean you need a psychologist on staff, but you better have somebody available and possibly, every week come and help out, be there on the weekends, whatever it is, but make sure that at least that we have that spiritual support of a summer staff chaplain. Who's there primarily for the health of the summer staff.
I wonder if this is the year to get creative about staff time off. I mean, even during the weeks, right? I mean, almost every program is built for an hour or two off. I wonder if this is the year to get creative about that.
And different camps do that differently. Some camps have an evening off. And sometimes that's effective and sometimes it's not, and so camps need to figure that out, though. I really think you're right in terms of how are we giving them time off, and is there a way that we can do this better?
So there's so much to unpack with this mental health idea. We're going to do an episode on this soon.
I think we have
where we'll be able to. We do bring up those resources, give some examples and wonder about that. So that was resolution number 2. Focus on mental health. What's next?
Number 3. So this is something that's been on my mind a lot. And as the camper surveys have come in, as the staff surveys have come in, I've really been seeing in real time a decline in spiritual practices and a decline in religious practices, both at camp, but also at home. And so this is something that camp can really do something about, because our camps are places that oftentimes have worship every day, have Bible study every day, pray at every meal, do devotions before bed. And so these are things that I think we really need to emphasize. And so I'm going to make the third one focusing on religious practices. And so once again, this is multi-layered, right? So as we ask you, our listeners, to focus on religious practices, that means start with yourself. Are you reading the Bible daily? Do you have a prayer group that you pray with regularly? So start with your personal religious practices, and then really encouraging the summer staff members in their religious practices. Resource them with devotional materials that they can do on their own. So it's not just teaching it, but it's also taking care of their own spiritual needs. Prayer partners can sometimes be a great practice at summer camp. But then really encouraging these religious practices among the campers so that they can take them home to their families. It used to be where we could assume that these campers that were coming from a religious background were going to church, weekly or several times a month at least, were praying with their family at least at meal times, maybe even reading the Bible with their families. That is less and less now. And so we can really have an impact on that. And so focusing on religious practices at camp with the intention of influencing religious practices in the home. That is one of the things that I would like all of our camps to really deeply consider.
Here's how I would do this. And I'm thinking about, as they're, as these program leaders and directors are thinking about the summer, we're getting to the point now already where they're looking at their schedules even, right? And they're thinking about the schedules of the week. Here's how I would do this. This might be a tangible way. You take your schedule, and as you're looking through it, you almost take like a, one of those little sticky circles, and you tag each of these schedule items with a spiritual practice. What spiritual practice is happening here at mealtime when we gather in the dining hall? It might be 2 or 3, where you can almost like tag them, and then you'd be able to see, look at all these green dots, look at all these orange dots, or whatever color coding it is, and see, are there gaps of these things that we want, of prayer, of, to the 4 keys we're talking about, caring conversations, of a chance for them to serve. And we could almost, that might be a way for us to kind of take an inventory. Hey, we've got a gap. We're not teaching them to do this ever. And then we'd be able to know, what is the energy like in a week in terms of these practices. That might be a tangible way to really see what's happening, just right on the calendar.
I think that's a great strategy. And I think another strategy is to focus on a specific spiritual practice and say, we're going to, this summer, we're going to focus on Bible reading. We're going to focus on family devotions. We're going to focus on mealtime prayer. So really making some of these things intentional, with the understanding that we can really move the needle with something like this by being intentional about it. So different strategies of how we might move forward with this.
The Effective Camp Project has helped Christian camps across the country tell their story in a new way to parents and donors. You know that camp makes a difference because you see it with your own eyes. But we need reliable data to convince those who are skeptical and to help us identify areas for improvement. Now is your chance to gather data from your own camp. Our team of experienced researchers works with you to create custom surveys for your campers and parents. We compare your results to data from dozens of other Christian camps to show where your camp really shines and to target areas for program development. In addition to data reports and in-depth consultations, you will receive a communications toolkit to share your unique results with your audiences. Visit effectivecamp.com to learn more.
All right, so we got 3, right? Wow, we're on a roll here. So we got focus on respectful participatory dialogue. We got focus on mental health. We've got focus on religious practices. Now, you're a marketing guy. I know that you got something related to marketing.
I do. Number 4, this is the year to communicate better than you ever have before, camp leader. This is the year that you communicate better than ever. We know that we get in our way of doing things, and of course, we all want to have as many people come as possible, get as many people to this retreat, get as many people to this camp, get as many people to whatever it is, and that's great. And of course, we're going to advertise. Right? This is where we start to break down some of these communication words. Advertising is a part of communication. It's one part of kind of the timeline of communication. Advertising is getting things out there so that people see it and then they want to take an action on something, whether it's coming to something or shopping at the camp store online or whatever it might be. So in order to communicate better than we ever have before, this might be a way to think about this. So one is that communication is not just advertising. It's not just a single time in the timeline here. There's communication to do, and I'm going to share a tool with you. We'll put it in the show notes. There's kind of this grid that we can take our communication spaces, might be social spaces or email or website or whatever it is, and then the other side of that grid is a timeline. And this is what I want you to focus on. Is remember that communication happens at 3 points in a timeline: before, during, and after. It's not just advertising before something to try to get them to come. There's communication to do before, to market, to advertise, to encourage, to call to action, all absolutely. And we often focus on that. Don't stop doing that. But there's also an opportunity for communication during, which is where we can share what's happening live in real time. And the biggest thing that does, and maybe it's for a camper or maybe it's for the parent who's at home, gets to see themselves there, gets to participate from wherever they are in a creative way. They get to be part of what's happening. And we've got unique tools and ways that we can do that. So there's a chance to share what's happening in real time, to share what's happening live, whether that's a camp thing or a fundraiser or whatever it might be. And then there's communication to do after, and that's when we get to tell stories. Right? So when something happens, when we've got this thing, this event, this camp program, this whatever it is, remembering that communication happens across that whole timeline, before, during, and after. We've got chances to call to action and market, share what's happening live so people can join the experience, and storytell after. And all of those things are important points in that timeline. So I'm going to share that grid in the show notes, Jake, so people could even just download it and apply it to their own context.
That would be awesome, because this is so helpful as I think about this, because I sometimes am able to do all this, but I would really need to write this down, like for each activity, and make sure that I did this and have a checkbox, because like I'm a program guy, and so I'm the guy that's like, okay, let's get it promoted, and then when people come, I'm into it and I'm there and I'm with them, and then I'm on to the next thing. What's the next program? Okay, let's promote that. Now when they're here, let's have a great time, and let's make sure that the people present have the best experience possible. And I'm not as good at the communicating in real time, like you talked about, and the follow-up. But what we're seeing in the research that we've been doing is more and more people are expecting this, especially the real-time piece. So parents want to know what's going on at camp. That's why some of them are hiding cell phones in their kids' luggage, because they want to make sure that there's a way to communicate. But if the camp is good at letting them know what's going on and letting them know that their kid is safe and this is where their kid is, they feel like they can participate alongside them. People that aren't able to attend a retreat, whether it's because of COVID, whether it's because of a scheduling problem, whether it's because of other ability issues, I mean, that they can actually be involved in some way, that they can participate in the auction online, even while there are people there live. I mean, these are all great things that we can do. But we should have a checklist like this for every one of our events, the before, during, and after. This is great. I'm sort of excited on behalf of our listeners that they'll have this resource. But then telling the stories, like you said, I mean, camp is so much about these stories, and we got to let people know how the event went, how the summer went. And we need to do that every event or every week.
So this is the year. This is the year to communicate better than you ever have before. There's not a position on your staff, even if you have a marketing person, like marketing director, there's not a position on your staff that isn't on your communications team. You hear that? Like everybody on your staff is a communicator. Everybody on your summer staff, everybody on your year-round staff are part of the communications team. We talk about that with church. Everybody's on the welcome team. The whole congregation, you're on the welcome team. You're all part of it. And that's how we need to think about it. And we can provide some system to that. But as we're talking in staff training, a module on you're a communicator, you're a storyteller of this place, that would be really valuable. So I'll share that tool in the show notes. So that's 4, communicate better than you ever have before. One left. What's our 5th?
The 5th one is actually related to the communication piece. We so often think of ourselves, or at least historically, camps as a place that you go and the experiences while you're there. But more and more, camps are becoming resource centers. So what I want to say for the 5th one is focus on resourcing your ministry partners, focusing on resourcing the people who aren't there and maybe who can't be there for whatever reason. But distance, again, COVID, and all these other issues that we've already been talking about. So this might go right alongside the communication piece. When I say resourcing your ministry partners, I'm specifically talking about your constituent congregations and your families. Those are the spaces of faith formation. The primary space of faith formation is the home. That's the number one space of faith formation. An additional space of faith formation is the congregational setting. And then as camps, we are sort of that third space. We're another space of faith formation. For some people, it's the primary space where they feel like it is, but really the influence of the home, you can never outdo that, no matter what the camp experience is like. That's why I'm doing something like resourcing for religious practices, sending those home so that we can influence the home becomes important. When I say resourcing ministry partners, we can do this through all these online tools right now. And so right now, especially during COVID, so many of our congregations have moved to online worship services. Even if they're still doing in-person worship services, most of them have some sort of an online option. This is an incredible opportunity for summer camps because during the retreat and the conference season that we're in right now, when it's not in the middle of the summer, we can put together worship services and we can do it really well. So put together a well-crafted camp worship service that has all of the sights and the sounds of camp in it and provide it to your ministry partners. Think about that. They've already got people that are engaged in these online worship services. They can plug and play your worship service into that. That's a huge reach for camps. I mean, so in a sense, it's a marketing tool, but what it also is, it's a resource for your ministry partners. So you're doing it for your ministry partners. It takes a long time for these pastors and church professionals to put together a worship service. You, as camps, can do one and do it really, really well, and then give that to them so that they can plug it in during a time when maybe they have less staff time, or it can alleviate some of the stress on them. So I encourage every single camp should be doing that. I hope every camp did that last year. You should do that now every year. Have that as something that you do and provide to your congregations. And do it twice a year if you're able, but certainly do it at least once.
And there's so much value back to yourself, right? Because a one-to-one or one-to-a-couple marketing strategy, connection strategy, as opposed to one time for many, right? To use the reality of social networks to do that is so much more efficient for you. So much more efficient, giving you the time for some mental health or for some other program development or just some white space in your world versus, I remember how hard it was when we would go to a different congregation every single Sunday. That was one of the biggest times of burnout for us when we were full-time program directors. Going to another one, to another congregation every single Sunday was exhausting. Valuable, of course, but do that one time and go to many. Woo.
Yeah, you can really have a wide impact by doing something like that, and engage people that may never set foot on camp, and they can hear about the ministries, and you can minister to them as well. So resourcing your congregations through a simple method like that, but then also resourcing your ministry partners in the home. So how are you getting into people's homes? And some of the camps have been incredibly creative at this, during the time of COVID. They were doing things like virtual campfires, and they were doing virtual prayer sessions, and they were having live worship services and things like that, and encouraging their constituency to participate in those things live. Keep doing that. Offer those resources for families. Design them with the idea that a family could sit around and do this. And so make it 5-6 minutes long. You can do it live for sure, or you can record it and put it out to people. So it might be a family devotional structure that you have for people. Maybe you have one a week, or maybe it's a live thing that you engage people, former campers, staff members, families in prayer and sharing of prayer requests and praying for one another, things like that. So there are lots of different opportunities for this. But this is a way that we can engage our folks, but also resource them, and make sure that the ministry of camp doesn't stay at camp. It goes back home.
Let's review, everybody. Here are the 5 resolutions for camp this year. So, Jake, what was one?
Focus on respectful, participatory dialogue.
And 2 was a reminder to focus on mental health in 2022.
Number 3 was focus on religious practices.
4, communicate better than you ever have before.
And 5, resource your ministry partners. And again, specifically through some of these online resources.
All right, so now it's your turn, everybody. You've got 2 things to do. One, you think about these 5, and you tell another staff member, you tell somebody else about them, make them listen too, and you see maybe it's all 5, maybe it's a couple of these that really resonate with you, and you figure out how to apply. Yeah, that's your one call. Number 2, we want to hear yours. We want to hear your New Year's resolutions for camp. And maybe it's a general, I want to see this in outdoor ministry, and maybe it's specific to your camp. So leave us a comment wherever you're seeing this, or send us a message wherever you're seeing this. We want to hear your New Year's resolutions for your camp, for yourself and for your camp. So we want to hear those. This was fun, Jake. I kind of liked it.
Yeah, we can get interaction through the Facebook page, I think. And we can get interaction through the website as well in the comments. But I agree. This is fun to kind of go through a list like this, and it's a little broader. We're not just focusing on a single topic, but looking at several things.
Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you next time on the Sacred Playgrounds podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. This episode was produced by me, Jared Rendell, and featured Dr. Jake Sorensen, lead researcher and founder at Sacred Playgrounds, LLC. Our theme music was written and performed by Taylor Wilson. You can find his original songs wherever you get your music. Learn more and connect with the Sacred Playgrounds team at sacredplaygrounds.com.